legacy mindset of our no and slow can actually come to a point where we actually increase our risk because we're not adopting new technology or we're trying to iterate off a 30-year-old technology.
I see a lot of opportunity for how usability can really enhance security, but it's traditionally seems to be seen as a trade-off, security versus usability. So it's very good that I think the industry is starting to view that differently.
Many executives in our industry are at the end of their careers where they usually avoid taking a lot of risk, frankly. And the demographic is also looking towards retirement. So do they have the energy to embrace all this change? And do they need to? And I would say most don't.
Hello and welcome back. Today we are privileged to have with us someone who has a strong vision in the world of access control security, Lee Odess. Lee brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table with a career that spans over 2 decades in the industry. Perhaps you know Lee from his newsletter, The Access Control Brief, where he regularly shares insightful analyses, trends, and forecasts about the access control industry. He's also organizing the upcoming Access Control Summit, ACS 23, on September 27th and 28th of this year. He has a passion for access control brands and startup companies. Lee's continuously pushing the envelope in how we perceive and use access control systems, making them more secure and user-friendly for everyone. So listeners, buckle up. We're diving deep today into the access control state of the industry, its future, and its integral relationship with both security and usability. Lee, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, you putting this together and everything that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you. So why don't we start by telling us a little bit about how you started the Access Control Brief and maybe some other things that drive you in the industry and what drives you to influence the industry?
I appreciate that. So the Access Control Executive Brief, really came from, this is sort of like my second round, if you would, around the idea of writing and analysts, provocateur of like pushing where I believe the industry is today and where it can be for tomorrow. My belief is that as we go through a digital transformation as an industry and we see the enterprise software world start to embed itself within what has been primarily a cottage industry focused on high security and doing something extremely important, which is keeping people safe. But as we, by keeping bad people out and doing locking and unlocking, but as we move forward to building upon this great base that we had, I believe we need to be able to tell a better story. We need to be able to have a place where we can think about and synthesize sort of the macro and micro trends of what's happening and how they're being applied. I also think, if anything, it's a formation of community. And that's really, if you look back at sort of my career, I've had sales positions, I've had marketing positions, I've done different things, but it's all been centered around really building community and then, figure out ways to make money and sell things and market things within that. But I see this as an opportunity, frankly, think about it. Like, I don't know how you and I would have met if it wasn't for, the community and the network and the industry that we're in, to then be able to have a conversation that is really focused on how do we leverage the legacy side of our industry and then bring it forward. I want to be able to do that. And so I set out and took the risk upon myself to go leverage, I would say, relationships I've had over the years to do just that.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for that because I think it's important to, in order to see change happen in an industry like this, you have to have those conversations and share information more openly. What are some of the things that you see as the biggest issues in maybe standards of access control or maybe the old way and how things might be changing?
Well, I mean, I think
not to unpack there.
Yeah, there are none, frankly. If they are, they're very small and few between. It's sort of a new way of working that we're sort of figuring ourselves out. Now, there's been historical thinking around it that's been mainly around like integrated and sort of a gated access to companies being able to work with other ones, which I think is actually within the industry as it was okay. But as the industry expands to go from cottage to mainstream and new influences like enterprise software, there's some expectations and formations of how we work that need to morph and change on that end. I don't take it lightly to think that there's a what we're doing as an industry of keeping people safe, there's a lot of risk, and it's very valuable, and it's scary, frankly. Like, if I bring in this new technology that's not tried and true, does it decrease my security project? And frankly, people can get hurt. So like
Yeah.
that's not taken lightly at all. But that said, you can almost argue at some point the legacy mindset of our no and slow can actually come to a point where we actually increase our risk because we're not adopting new technology, or we're trying to iterate off a 30-year-old technology, or we're not incentivizing the leadership in our industry properly to where they would actually bring in, like, I'm part of that problem, have been, I get it. I guarantee you there's trickle down into, like, say, safe schools. It's not just a technical and societal problem. It's also a formation of our industry that we probably can do a lot more things. But, you know, I'm a believer that it will happen. There'll be pockets where it won't, but I do believe what may be
Yeah.
seen as the minority of our industry currently now is going to be the majority.
What about usability and interoperability? Where do you see that heading in the future?
Sure. So I'll separate those two. I'll talk about
Yeah.
usability first. So the user experience specifically, I'll talk on that end. So let's break that down. As an industry, we've always sold through a channel. We've never really known who the end user was. The customer has really been like the admin of a security department who's
Yeah.
managing these systems, right? So that usability had to frankly focus on them. And really, inconvenience was actually a feature of our industry when it came to the end user. Like, if you couldn't get in the building, we put up barriers, blockers. Like, those are still security posture techniques to help. So if I could slow you down if you're a threat coming in, then there's a better chance of either people getting out or you never making it in, or giving me time to get, the right people in the right place to to de-escalate an escalation, right? Like, so now when we talk about conveniences being brought in, and we talk about a new end user who, realistically, in large parts of the world, there are people that have to worry and really do focus around, they don't feel safe. Now, in large parts of the world, especially affluent ones, you kind of don't worry about it as much. Like, it's becoming more front of mind, like when schools and things like that. But if I go to the movie theater, the first thing in my mind is not, am I safe here? No, it's like, do I want popcorn? Like, that's how a lot of people think. So,
Yeah.
the human side of this is we need to figure out how to deliver both safety with some conveniences so that the user experience is better. And it's transforming the way that our products work. And with the introduction of technology, things like mobile, biometrics, like, there's a lot of things that come into the opportunity for us to take what is probably even historically the right thing, which is, if it's considered convenient, it's secure, to where now it's, how do I deliver convenience and security all at the same time? And I'm going to die on the hill that it's done with technology and good practice and good policy. It's not
Yeah.
in lieu of technology. So that would be the usability side. So it's becoming even more important. Like, I think it's, I joke that some of the bigger companies I worked at throughout the experience, we didn't even have anybody who was an expert on UX and UI. It's kind of like how a lot of departments believe just because you can write code, and you can also build websites. And it's like, nah, or,
Yeah.
there's a difference. Could you?
Very different.
Yeah. Should you? Probably not. But so we're
Yeah.
seeing the same thing.
I also see that even with integrators, efficiency becomes a big issue when usability is very low. And I see a lot of opportunity for how usability can really enhance security, but it's traditionally seems to be seen as a trade-off, security versus usability. So it's very good that I think the industry is starting to view that differently.
Well, but to think about it too. So as a dealer, an integrator, installer, historically you made money on a lot of things, but one of them was the configuration of the system and the belief that the human being that's there I'm the expert, I can set the system up properly. So
Yeah.
in some ways, and we saw this in the lighting control industry when my first job out of school was in lighting control, and we introduced the company I worked for, wireless lighting control, to electrical contractors who historically made all of their money off of pulling wire and installing products. So here we are introducing a new product that says there are no wires. So we were a threat to them feeding their families. And now that was a first blush, but when we really got into it, we were able to show them how you can get in and off of jobs. There's new opportunities. There's easier ways to make money than sitting on a bucket all day long programming and things. So it's an educational and a sort of an evolution. And frankly, this is why I also believe that it's incumbent on our industry to do better storytelling and training and certification so that we can show people not only the technical ways, but then also the business impacts and the rest, to where they can take advantage of this opportunity versus it being a threat. So interoperability goes along to me with the standards one. Like interoperability is a dream. What we currently have now is integrated. So we're going to have more integrated systems than we did in the past, which I think is okay, because it's sort of like, walking, then jogging, then sprinting. We're in the jog part of this where I think it's integrated. The other part is that I think is honest, is there are positives and negatives of both interoperability that come along, and there's positive and negatives with, closed architectures and systems as well too. So like,
Yeah.
I think we need to be fair to say, like, there's probably what we're moving more to is some common practices that are more modern, and then the application of the architectures, approaches, use cases, whatever, to fit the customer need and the business model that people want. Like, you could argue that the iPhone is not open, it's interoperable or integrated, and probably more integrated than anything else, right? Is it
Yeah.
bad? Some would say, but others like me, the user, I think it's great.
This podcast is brought to you by Quantal Security. It's important noting how tech innovations like the ones pioneered by Quantal are actively reshaping the security landscape. At Quantal, our mission is to build software innovations that make systems more accessible and more secure. From leveraging quantum technology to integrating anomaly detection and immutable ledger systems, we're solving security problems in the realms of access control and beyond. If you want to learn more about Quantal, visit our website at quantalsecurity.com and reach out to us. Everything that we've talked about so far kind of leads into the idea of bringing more technology into the industry. And there's challenges with that. Like you said, we want people's lives are at risk. We want to make sure that everything is done in a secure fashion. And so traditionally, the access control industry is sort of lagged behind in terms of technology by a decade or more. That seems to be changing a little bit. And what do you think are the main factors in seeing that kind of change come about with bringing more technology?
Yeah, it's funny. I just was writing an article around this idea that I proposed that basically said that we can use a 20% challenge of interjection into our business, which is, if we're doing 100% of the old stuff and like what we've historically done, can we introduce at least 20% of new? And my belief is that 20% new, it was a challenge I gave. Could we do that? That would have such a massive impact. So what I mean by that too is, like, instead of us selling 30-year-old technology and the companies have figured out how to make the most margins from that, if we could sell, 80% of the 30-year-old technology, just 20%, because you would see sort of continuation. What is that first 20% would ultimately start to be older too, and we would see that we could sell it and the market would advance more on that side. The things that I think that are holding us back mostly in that, if that's what your question was, is two things actually, and they're got nothing to do with technical. Now, there are some that are technical and I could talk, but I personally believe the two that are the biggest impediments to the adoption of new technology and what we do is demographics and incentives. Number one, the demographics. The legacy industry is predominantly male and aging, including myself. So this isn't picking on anybody. I'm part of that demographic. And many executives in our industry are at the end of their careers where they usually avoid taking a lot of risk, frankly. And the demographic is also looking towards retirement. So do they have the energy to embrace all this change? And do they need to? And I would say most don't. And I don't think we talk enough about that, because I actually think to a person, that's a real scary thing to say out loud. But I mean, I look at my own self and think, like, do I have the energy and do I want to go build like the same way I did 10, 20 years ago? And also, if I'm living in a place where I live and, it's the best job around and I'm at a high level enough position, enough income coming in, my kids are about to graduate high school, mine aren't, but some are, do I want to introduce risk into my life at work that could jeopardize where I fit in the world? And I would say most don't. And I'll argue all day long that drives decision-making. that impacts
Yeah.
adoption of technology.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's risk analysis, and with a lot of these larger companies too, there's if what they're doing works and is profitable, there's not as much driving them towards bringing in new technology. I wonder, what are some of the technological challenges with this
I mean, I think the
that you see?
technology, one of the biggest technological things that we have is these systems were, think about like sort of the arc of life of product development, right? Usually the products of today was designed and created 5 years ago on a, you know,
Yeah.
a business requirement documentation that turned into a product requirement documentation to a technical one 5 years ago. And investment theses were done based off of that. So then by the time it comes to market, in the age of change that we're seeing today, it's old before it even launches.
Yeah.
So, and then if you back out 30 years and our products were built with a couple of things in mind. Number one, they were built on the idea that I'm going to install this panel on this hardware and stuff on the wall. And I'm then going to have an annuity for moving forward where I iterate off of what's already been invested in and done. So we're set up as an iterative industry, not really one that is
Yeah.
more around innovation. Now, we do have innovations that happen, sure, but they've been primarily iterations off of, you know, legacy technologies. Again, there's, you know, whether it's the architectures of how they're built. I don't know what a lot of these are written and coded in, the documentation and the idea that, you know, of integrations to other things or having systems sit on top, like basic APIs and SDKs. You know, I also think the technical concerns and issues that you have is like, look at the wiring side of what we have. It's built off of Wiegand wiring in the access control industry, for instance. Old technology, but you know what? It works. And that's probably the worst
Yeah.
part, is that it works and it's cheap and it does. But, you know, just because it can doesn't mean it should.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the biggest frustrations that I have is with, there's Wiegand, which is basically plain text, very insecure, and it's a standard, but like you said, it's cheap, it's easy, it works, and all the integrators know how to do it. So, and wire it. So it's a standard, and pushing for more advanced standards, like going even just to OSDP, is a hurdle, it seems. I mean, I don't know what percentage of the industry has moved to OSDP, but I still think it's a fairly
It's low.
small percentage. What do you think is the important methods for? Do there need to be more concrete standards in the industry to really push for better security from Wiegand to OSDP even?
Yeah, I do. But I think part of the problem that we have is that we try to solve these things all being technical, and there's not enough of a business conversation. Because if you think about
Yeah.
it, if I'm running a business, I've already invested in all of this stuff. I've got it out. My job is to maximize as much revenue ROI as humanly possible out of the system. Like that's typically how a lot of these are created. So the known thing that I have, I need to understand the business implications of me doing the new thing. And even if the new thing is technically better, it doesn't necessarily mean it's business wise better. And I think we've been such an industry of technical people that we lose sight or don't trust the business people. I literally had a CTO of an organization who I had a conversation about a standard that they're looking to bring into the market, where I said, my belief is this thing is dead on arrival because you have not brought in the business side, because as it goes up into these bigger, larger organizations, to the people that will make priority decisions of investment and just frankly, roadmap prioritization, you haven't involved the business side to where it makes business sense for them. It makes technical sense, but unless it makes business sense, they're not going to do it. So in my
Yeah.
opinion is, and his thought was, if I bring business people in, they're going to ruin it.
That's typical of an engineer.
Yeah, but it's
I feel like, yeah.
typical of what is, when you ask the question of like, why don't we do it? Because technically it makes sense. Is because I actually don't think it's a technical problem. I think it's a business problem.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. There needs to be strong business motivation, or, regulation to force the industry to move into a more advanced place on the security side. But that's, a whole other can of worms. So yeah, I know it's a very big issue that needs to be worked on with a diverse team, probably, of
Sure.
people who understand the business side and the engineering side. So we talked a lot about the problems of introducing new technology, but what do you think are some of the big motivators in the industry for embracing new technology? Do you think that access control is starting to feel behind, or they're getting more push from the end user saying, we want something that's more usable, or a combination?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think one of the things is that as our industry moves outside of the cottage side into the more mainstream, you go from a $10 billion opportunity to a $70 billion opportunity. So there's 60 billion reasons why people will try new technology and adoption as it grows beyond the traditional side of what it's been on that end. I also believe that there's an inherent real desire for our industry to deliver more safety and security to people. And there is a group that does believe that newer technologies will, coupled with the legacy, would help save more people, pain and suffering. So that human side is not lost on the legacy nor the new, and knowing that they're going to do it. To what degree, I don't know, but there's at least it will open up innovation on that side. So you got a net new business opportunity. You've got the ability to even strengthen the value of why a lot of people in our industry do what they do on that side, as two big reasons why I believe we would see more innovation, more adoption of new technology. I then also would say is as it goes more mainstream, there's investment that comes in, new ideas, new people. Couple that with a values driven charter where you feel, like you can help make schools safer, which is far different than, say, I don't know, some of this other technology stuff that you got going on where it's like, can you make a better game or, a better dating app and things like that? I don't know. I just feel like that's our opportunity to be able to not only make some money, but also do a lot of good.
Yeah, I mean, it's the hierarchy of needs. Like security is at the top of people's minds. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to do good for people, make people safer, actually safer, not just feel safer. I think there's a good amount of security theater in the access control industry, but I do see it getting better, which is really important. So we talked a lot about bringing in new technology to the industry and industry drivers. Do you have any other thoughts about where the industry is headed and important things that need to change, or that you're really trying to push through your briefs?
Yeah, I think it's the capturing of that $70 billion opportunity, the value beyond locking and unlocking. I think it's shifting. We talk about it being from keeping bad people out to letting the right people in, completely very different. And I think if you were to extend that even beyond, like I do believe we're getting to a place where the relationship that we have with spaces changes, and the access control industry plays a pivotal part, where this idea that I can walk up to a space and express who I am versus it being a given identity for it, which is, laughable because it's not really my identity. It's a piece of plastic that someone said is, if I have this piece of plastic, I can get in. Or even on the mobile side, if I have this piece of plastic inside digital bits into my phone, I then present it and the system will open up. Yeah, I can drive a higher level of authentication and assurance off of, but still, this wasn't me expressing myself to it and then it taking that information and making decisions based off of policies and a lot of things, to where the way that I interact with the physical spaces that I frequent on a regular basis, I believe will deliver a higher level of experience as well as a higher level of safety, which, in a weird way, you would like to believe that being more safe is actually part of the user experience. It's just right now, the way that we do it, in my opinion, is around inconveniencing, where I do believe that there's a way to do it to where I can deliver safety and security and it be a great user experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the future we'll see more leveraging of AI and quantum and other cutting edge technology that, like you said, can make it more seamless for people to enter and exit rooms and doors, but have better analytics around that to understand who's going in and when, and really tighten the security in a way that makes it so that it's not beholden to the user to have the responsibility of knowing how to interact with the system. I think I had a really interesting conversation in my last interview. She's a psychologist that sees that even in access control systems, people use the systems incorrectly and they don't hold the key card to the scanner for long enough, or things like Java cards, things like that. And that leads to piggybacking inside of facilities and making the user have the majority of the responsibility for using the system correctly leads to security failures in a lot of instances. So I think that's on point. So if you aren't subscribed to the Access Control Brief, I highly recommend it. I also recommend checking out the ACS 23 conference in DC this September. Lee, do you want to share anything else that you'll be involved with in the near future?
Yeah, so we've got that. We also have CRETech New York, which is a prop tech commercial real estate show where we've brought together 15 companies to tell a story that is fitting for the commercial real estate market and around property technology. So that's a good show. But no, I mean, I'm just looking forward to continuing the right, building community, and yeah, hopefully everyone will come to the ACS 23 show in Washington, DC in September 28th. It's lining up to be a really, I would say, first of its kind, where we've got 45 leaders of our industry, both one's from the legacy, one's from the new, everybody sort of in one space talking about how we believe that our industry is transforming because of the digital transformation. So no, it should be good.
Great. Well, thanks, Lee. And thank you all for listening to the podcast today. If you like this episode, you can follow us for more on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.